Welcome back to another, I was going to say Pitchfork live stream. It is a Pitchfork live stream. It's Three Skulls Tavern. I'm Matt, the host, and I am doing another Pitchfork Dev Diary. This makes, I think, the 9th or 10th, so I've done quite a few now. Last time I looked at conflict, a conflict system, a combat system, fleshed that out. Basically trying to go with a lighter version of the Mutant Year Zero system. I'm not super happy with it. At first blush, it's a bit more crunchy than I want it to be, so I haven't actually tackled that yet. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it as is for playtesting and let the playtesting work out some of the kinks, specifically asking people that I'm playtesting it with to look at ways that maybe, suggestions for simplifying combat. And I'll be looking at that myself specifically when I'm running it too. The second half of that I wanted to look at today is, that I didn't manage to get around to last time, is chasing, and specifically chase mechanics. This is something I feel fairly strongly about. I've talked about it before on Mud and Blood. And basically I want to include some form of chase mechanic in this game. I don't know exactly what form that's going to take just yet. I do have some ideas. Initially, I wanted to have something that could flow seamlessly from combat into chasing and back again. So it would use the same initiative system if I'm using initiative, which I currently am using. And similar sort of, action economy, that sort of thing. I don't know if I'm still going to go that route. I've put a little bit of thought into it since the last stream, and I can't really find a way without overhauling combat completely. So I have two options on my plate. One is to come up with a chase mechanic that sort of fits in with the game, fits in with the mechanics I've come up with so far, but doesn't necessarily tie into combat. Or I scrap the work I did on my combat episode last week, which was, I think, 4.5 hours long of public of live streaming. And try and come up with something different that fits in with chasing. And at the moment, that's what I've tried to think of a way of doing, and I haven't managed to crack it yet. There might be a really simple way of handling it. There might be a really elegant way of handling it. But I think that will, again, when I'm looking at doing combat during playtesting, that is another aspect of combat I'll be looking at as well, including simplifying it, but also, is there a way I can tweak things a bit to make chasing seem to fit in with it just nicely? Now, there are a lot of games that do chase mechanics. I've done as I said before, I've done an entire episode on the Mud and Blood podcast about chase mechanics. If you want to go listen to that, I highly recommend it. Let me just look it up here very quickly. So if I go mbcast.co, and pimp my other podcast here. If you're not familiar with Mud and Blood, it's a podcast that has been running weekly for over 2 years now. I run it with my friend Liam. And we basically, it's not devoted to the Year Zero engine like this Twitch channel or YouTube channel is. It's specifically targeting grim and dark games. So, chase scenes, number 83. So yeah, if you look up Mud and Blood in your app of choice, and then look for episode 83, it was on July 21st of July, so just like 3 weeks ago. This is the episode. So we did a 2.5 hour episode all about chase scenes. So it's pretty fresh in my mind. Like 3 weeks ago isn't that long ago. We looked at a number of things. You can see links to here to all these things as well. The only one I'm really going to be talking about is I'll be looking at Call of Cthulhu. I'll be looking at, which I think is a bit too crunchy. I'll be looking at Delta Green, which is a much more simplified version. And I'll be looking at this Snakes and Ladders system, which I think is kind of innovative and kind of interesting. So we'll start with the Snakes and Ladders one, which is at this site here, 10footpolemic.blogspot.com. If you just type in Snakes and Ladders Chase, or Snakes Ladders Chase into Google, this should be the first one that comes up. And basically, you have this Snakes and Ladders grid. In fact, I have it here on PDF. There's a PDF link on that site. And basically, the idea here is that whoever's being pursued goes first. Everybody rolls a die based on their armor. So obviously the less armor you're wearing, the higher the die you're going to be able to roll. It's assuming everybody's running as fast as they can, and the two lowest results move. Sorry, add the two lowest results together and move the group's token that amount. So it's kind of interesting, right? You don't have people moving individually. You have people moving as a group. You ignore the higher results, and you go with the lowest two. And you can move backwards or forwards. It doesn't have to be forward, right? And basically, that's how it works. If the tokens for the pursuer and the pursued are on the same row, the two characters with the highest rolls may each narrate and make an attribute test. If they succeed, they may each move the group's token one space forward or move the NPC space back. So the idea is when you're on the same row, you're getting close to each other, and you can test an attribute to see if you can do something within the story to do something. The thing I really like about this is that it's got a lot of randomness built in. You land on certain squares and something specific happens, like you toss some coins to distract them. You do this kind of distraction. There's a hazard that you have to make a test for. Fresh air, where you get a little bit of an HP boost. Again, remember, this is made for the OSR. Specifically written by... This version was tweaked by David Black, who's done the Black Hack. Yeah, anyway, and it's pretty straightforward, right? You land on the hilt of a sword. You go up to the point. If you land on the point of a sword, I think you go down to the bottom. Let me just read that very quickly. It should be like that. Yeah, if either token lands on a sword hilt, travel along the sword to its point. So, if you were to land on 19 where the tip of the sword is, it wouldn't make any difference. But if you were to land on 12, you would go back. If you landed on 22, you would go back. 22 is interesting because that'll just jump you really far back. And I just kind of like that. It's got a lot of randomness built into it. It's a little mini game, but I'm not convinced I want to do that. So I mean, that is one option. Like I could tweak this system and use that in the game. I'm tempted. Yeah, I mean, I'm tempted to playtest it because it looks like a lot of fun. But I'm not going to do it. Ultimately. So we'll think about that. I mean, it might be something I could do on the stream. In fact, I could do it right now. I could do a pretend chase right now. The problem with that is I would want to actually tweak this for my system. So change things like HP, change how you're rolling. So in fact, I could actually tie fatigue into this, and I could tie like fatigue or stability. Stability being like sanity, vitality. Did I say fatigue? I meant vitality. Apologies. Vitality being things like your endurance, your stamina. So that's how I would run it. I would run it with probably rolling stamina every round. I would say instead of rolling stamina, maybe you would roll stability. May have to make a stability test if the pursuer caught up within a certain number of squares. Something like that, right? That seems pretty straightforward. I like this bit where if they're catching up, you can try to do something to try and get away. Yeah. The GM also rolls 2d6, and that is the amount that the NPC moves. Yeah, change the swords to pitchforks. That's an easy hack, right? I don't know. I'm kind of wondering whether I should put this into the playtest. It's tempting. It's tempting, right, to tweak this. But let's look at the other options first, right? So this is definitely an option. This is an interesting little mini game. There's a lot of randomness built into it. It's pretty rigid. Like, I guess you could change the end position and not have it as 25 for a short chase or something like that. Maybe that makes sense. Also, I see no real easy way of tying this into a conflict. So you would either have the chase ending with a conflict, and it's basically that would be when the pursuer catches up to the party, then you would switch into a conflict mode, and it would feel very much like two different systems, going from one minigame into a combat minigame. The other thing would be if you're in a combat and you decide you want to run away and somebody starts to pursue you, but the combat is still going on, say, for the rest of the combatants, and that could be quite odd, where you can't really run them simultaneously. Which is kind of what I wanted with it as I started off. So, yeah, The one thing it does have is it does have turns in it, right? So because you're going, then the enemy's going, then theoretically, you could tie it into the action economy. So I guess you could run this alongside a normal combat. I'm just trying to think this through. Pitchforks and torches, right? This is the game of mobs. Oh shit! I just wanted to show this as an interesting option, and I'm really starting to seriously consider it. Fuck it. Let's run with it. This is how you do game design. You steal other people's ideas. But you give them full attribution, right? So I'll make sure to put that straight into the playtest document here. We're going to run this with that, I guess. So acknowledgements, and I'm going to put in here under kingdom, I'm going to put... $10-foot plane. I'm going to put the whole website in. Who wrote this, actually? I don't actually know who this is. About me, view my... Okay, you've got no name there, friend. James Young. We got it. So, we're going to put the link in here like so. Control K, Control V, Enter. Oh, in fact, I did it the other way. This one here. And technically what I was just looking at is the Black Hack kind of implementation of it. I like graphically how this is laid out. Yeah, and it's from a blog. I mean, there's not going to be an issue with using it because it's... yeah. I've given attribution there. I could actually reach out to James Young there, make sure he's okay with it. But giving attribution to it with a link to this to like it being used, I think is really good as well. Yeah, and the actual blog post, the rules are a little bit different. So that's kind of interesting. That David Black has taken it and tweaked it a little bit. So regardless, I'm going to start looking at this right now. So the first thing to look at is how many spaces there are. There are 25 spaces along the track. Some time ago he posted Snakes and Ladders, and I'm gonna just look at how he's... Okay, he showed... Okay, this is kind of cool as well, because this is the original Snakes and Ladders, right? This is looks like Hindi to me. Yeah, that's Hindi. So I guess the original Snakes and Ladders was came from India. But there are a lot of boxes on that, which is going to take too long. So I think that's interesting that it's been simplified into a 5x5. And he's actually not provided a graphic for it. So I guess the idea is that you use an actual Snakes and Ladders board. But we have a template here. In fact, I'm just going to look up Snakes and Ladders. To Americans, I guess this would be Shoots and Ladders, which is what I grew up playing, but I did learn when I was a teenager that it was called this in the UK. I guess the Commonwealth. Snakes and Ladders board we're going to look at and see what they look like. Because one thing I think that needs a little bit of fixing from... Not fixing, but thing I would improve on here is that there are only two places where the chase goes backwards, right? You go backwards at 2 points, on 12 and 22. And I think normally there's a little bit more than that. However, that also probably needs a little bit of playtesting to see if, the number of times you would fall back that much on a during a chase is theoretically not much. It should be more like they're catching up to you. And if if there's lots and lots of opportunities for you to fall backwards, yeah, it might be problematic. So the first thing I'm looking for here is something with about 25 squares, because I think that's a good number. It feels like a good number to me. Oh god, there we go. That's pretty simplistic. 2 snakes, 2 ladders. Snakes and ladders for children. Okay. Look at this one here. We've got 3 ladders. We've got 3 snakes. Winner. 25 number winner. That feels about right to me. 3 of each. And again, play test this, and if it feels like it's too much one way or the other, then I can always remove it. I kind of like this one as well, where you've got 2 of each. One of the snakes is at 24, so if you land just before 24, like you're just about to reach the destination, boom, something happens and you go back. So I like having that snake right at the right near the end. Although this is here on the 23, and David Black puts it on the 22 on his. I quite like that. I mean, yeah, and the reason I'm looking at this is the reason I'm not just copying David Black's is because I don't want to just be doing a carbon copy. I want to put a little bit of thought into it and think, you know, first of all, is 25 a good number? I like a lot of the rules that have come up here, where if you're on the same row, then you can do something. You can make an attribute test to try and either push them back or move forward a little bit. So I gotta also think about whether I want to make the rows a bit longer and maybe not do a square board, but do something like a narrow board or a wide board. Yeah, no, I'm actually gonna. Yeah, I think the idea is with armor. I'm gonna be testing vitality every round. Well, this is where I want to tie it into the initiative system that I already have. And the initiative system I currently have is that you're testing, you're eventually testing your, oh god, I could do it exactly the same. The first round is your stability, so, you know, keeping your shit together while you're running away, keeping your head. The second one is acrobatics, which is, I've been thinking about how to call acrobatics, but acrobatics is like your agility and stuff. So you can think about, like, as you're like leaping over things and like trying to maneuver yourself into a position where you can just run, and then from there onwards you're testing your vitality. And I think if I keep that system, it's exactly the same as combat. You could theoretically just whack this mini game, like this board, this snakes and ladders board, onto the table during combat, and at the next round you're like, okay, everybody's rolling, and you're rolling, but this person chasing you, so let's see how far you're getting with this one. Yeah, I could even do different size boards, theoretically. I could do like a 3x3 instead of a 5x5. But we're going to stick with a 5x5 for now. I'm going to follow this option here, which has got 3 of each, because that means things are happening a little bit more interestingly. I'm just going to compare how this board looks with with the Black Hack version or the David Black version. So let's move these next to each other. Oh, it's getting warm. It's getting warm. So you go down from 12 to 2. You go down from 12 to 2. Interesting. You go up from 3 to 13. From 3 to 13. So that's basically the same. You go up from 7 to 16. You go up from 7. Okay, so this is actually very, very similar. You go up from 10 to 19. You go up from there 10 to 19. And it looks like he's just swapped. And he goes 22 down to not quite 1. 22 down to 14. And you go from 17 straight to the end. So 17, there's another sword taking you straight to the end. Shit, I really like that. I like how 22 isn't knocking you all the way back. It's taking you back down. It's taking you down to 14, right? I really don't like 23 back to 1. I don't think that works for a chase. I like it setting you back quite significantly. That's a fair chunk. You're back basically you go back 2 rows, but you were only at the start of a new row. Like to get to 22, you're effectively theoretically rolling. You're coming out of this stretch and going into that one. So you would have started the previous turn on that row, in theory. And by going back to 14, you're almost at that same row again. So it looks quite punitive, but in fact, it's actually not that bad, I don't think. And I think jumping from 17 to 25 is an interesting idea as well. No, I'm going to look at some other options, some other boards, and see if there's anything else that's jumping out at me. Doing Snakes and Ladders board 25. Any ideas from the chat about modeling this? I mean, this 25 by 25 with only 2 also looks kind of interesting. You can go from 10 down to 3. You can go from 5 up to 15. If you land on 24, you go back to 13. And if you hit 12, you go up to 21. That's also quite good. Yeah, you can move backwards, which is interesting as well. Yeah. I think I might go with this simplified one. That was a mosquito, by the way, just landing on my ear. So I have to close my window in a second. Get eaten alive or slapping myself constantly during this stream, which would be interesting. Yeah, nothing else is jumping out at me. There's this one here. What's this? 21 down to... Okay, 14 down to 2. 15... You go up. That's pretty shite. 15 to 16. You're gonna go up that anyway. Yeah. All right. So what did I say? I said I was gonna go with this one. This one here. All right. So we're gonna open this one up, and that's the winner. Winner, chicken dinner. Cool. Need a bug zapper. Okay, so how am I gonna draw this out? I'm gonna use. I don't have a graphics tablet with me. I'm just gonna sketch it out in Photoshop. I think probably overkill. I could use Affinity in Illustrator. Affinity, Adobe Illustrator. Mosquitoes. All right. So 3,000 by 3,000. Fine. No problem. Let's put a quick grid up here. Now, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to save this. Art assets. Snakes. Ladders board. Mosquito again. Alright. Control J, make a copy, drag it over. Et voila! Let's put that at the bottom here, lower the opacity a bit. Okay, so paintbrush, black lines. How big do I want that? That'll do, 35 pixels. Oh, I'm on the wrong layer. Mouse drawing, yay! So the idea here is just to use this for a bit of sketching it out. I guess I could have used Excel for this too. That probably would actually be, or Google Sheets. Too late. I'm committed to Photoshop now. Oh, get out of here, mosquito. Ah! I'm gonna leave that in. Fuck it. Okay. Then we've got a ladder. Got a ladder going up here. We got a ladder going up here. We've got a snake going down here. And we got a snake going down here. Okay. Thank you for your hard work. You may leave. Oops. Just realized you can't see the whole thing. There we go. Kind of hard. Yeah, it's a bit busy, so let me do something else here. Change the color to red. Pinky red. I'm going to say you go up here. Go up here. You go down here. And you go down here. Alright. Okay, a bit easier to read. Okay, let's save that as a JPEG. Whoa, 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 whoa. This is a big file. I don't need it that big. Yep, that'll do. Save it as a JPEG. Call it Snakes. Snakes Ladders. Pitchfork 1. Alright. Fine. Let's get out of Photoshop then. Let's... come back here. Alright, let's bring up chasing then. Conflict. Fleeing and chasing. Chasing uses the same initiative as combat. If starting a chase during combat, do not start rolling again from round 1. Continue directly from the current round in. Current combat round, I should say. Okay, so that's the big caveat here. So this is the thing I've got to think about: is how far do you move? And I think the distance you move is you roll your vitality. Vitality is also endurance and stamina, so I like that should be used to move you forward. And maybe it's just the number of total successes from the party is how far along you move. And we could say something like, so everybody's testing it. We can say the number of failures, because the way combat normally works is if you fail, the enemy goes first. So we could say, because you're moving as a group, we could say something like, you roll your whatever it is during that round. The number of successes determine how far you move. The number of the number of failures get added to the dice pool for that round for the enemy's vitality, because the enemy is also going to have some vitality they're going to be rolling. So yeah. Seems like swings and roundabouts, right? If you've the group size is actually going to have a big is really going to determine how far that the pursuer is going to move. I just seen the snap to grid thing. Yeah, I like the hand drawn like rough thing. I don't actually like if I'm doing this properly. I'm actually going to draw it by hand, and then scan it in, turn it into a vector image. So, but yeah, I probably could have done a bit quicker. Snap to grid. Anyway, where was I? This just starts getting really complicated, right? I wanted something potentially simple. When I was thinking about doing this stream, I was starting to think I want to keep something simple. I'm going to look at Delta Green as a good starting point. Dip into Call of Cthulhu, but I wanted to just look at this mini game because I thought it seemed interesting. Now that I'm looking at it, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not 100% sure. How I feel about it. Right, first thing I need to think is I want to tie initiative into it. So the way the default system, the OSR system works is that the pursued always go first. Right, I'm just going to open that up again. The pursued go first. That ignores the entire initiative mechanic. It ignores fatigue in the vitality attribute or the vitality trait. Which I think is really important, not only in combat, but I think also for chasing. Like if you're tired, you've already been having a combat, you've been injured, you should be rolling less on that. So I like the idea that you need to roll successes for you to move forward. And maybe I can simplify it a bit and say you move. Fucking hell, this is hard to think of, right? So if we're assuming like a lightly armored crew from this game here, you're gonna have people rolling d8s and d6s, right? Let's say it's a typical party size of 4, right? With a mix of d8s and d6s, they're gonna be rolling like 4. The average is gonna be, I guess, something like 7, 14. So divide that by 2. You're only taking the 2, so you're going to be rolling like 7 most of the time, which seems like you're going to get quite far along actually. But you could roll less, you could roll more, you can also move backwards, etc. So moving backwards allows you to hit one of those swords and nip up to the top, right? Or you can also manipulate the enemy so you can push them backwards onto a sword hilt and make them go back, which I think is the beauty of it. The idea here then is how do you tie that into a year 0 mechanic where what kind of trait do you use for this? And I guess the simple solution would be because the stamina value is always based on okay, here's an interesting idea. You can move a number of squares based on your stamina. Sorry, I keep saying stamina or fatigue. It's vitality. You can move a number of squares equal to your vitality. It makes it a bit predictable, like where you're going to land and stuff. And I don't like that. There's no random factor there. But I like that as a starting point because your fatigue can be anywhere from 5 to 9. So that seems like a good sort of number. That's also tied into here. And I guess what we can say is maybe you move as fast as the lowest fatigue in your party, and successes you roll that as well, and successes will move you that many spaces on top of your lowest fatigue value. So everyone's testing, and for a big group, you're potentially going to move more than your enemy, right? Okay, so that could be one way to do it, right? and you can move forward or backward. So if you're thinking that the average, let's say the average fatigue starting fatigue value is going to be 7, but you've been fighting and stuff, and one of your people is kind of injured or something, and they're down to 3, you're only ever going to be rolling 3 die. You're only going to be ever moving 3 on here, so it's likely that you're going to get caught fairly quickly, potentially. But then you also are testing it as well. So you're like, it might be 3, but if I can get a burst of speed going, if I can roll well, if I can push the roll to do well as well, then I can pull ahead. I kind of like that, and that gives you the option of rolling quite quickly and quite well. It also keeps the random factor in there as well, because although you know what your base is going to be, it can always sort of be modified. So that kind of works. We'd also would be rolling the stat based on the combat initiative. So if you were fresh and it wasn't starting with combat, you would roll with your stability first, then your acrobatics, and then from there on it would be your vitality. And we could say, if that's the case, then the acrobatics skill would be the lowest denominator, which would be a very small amount of movement, right? So that's the interesting thing there. It doesn't really work, because you have values between 5 and 9 for your vitality and your stability, which works. Your acrobatics don't work like that. People are gonna have starting values between 1 and potentially, it depends on how advanced, how far along the characters are, but they're gonna be kind of 1 to something else. I'm kind of thinking, yes, this is why I kind of don't want to break out from the initiative I've already got, but I can't see a way of, unless I'm just tying it to successes. I don't want to introduce new things like a move value to people. I mean, I could just make it a straight number and say you move this number of spaces for every success you roll on your initiative. You move an extra space for every bit of armor. Man, it gets really tactical. Yeah, but it requires like an extra roll there, right? And I think I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to be like, what happens if nobody succeeds, right? That means does that mean they don't move? Sure. But it's more or less the same concept, right? I know I'm looking at the wrong one here. What I don't want, because I think this would slow it down, is making two sets of, like, 2 different types of rolls every single round, and that would be rolling your initiative to see how many successes you get. That determines whether you roll a d6, and then you get +1s. If everybody fails their roll, then you theoretically wouldn't be moving. What I quite liked is what I quite like is if the vitality, God, I need to get that word in my head. If the vitality level is low enough, if one person in the group is suffering from low vitality because they've been injured or whatever else, they will be slowing the group down. And I like that being the base, like the lowest person in being pursued, like what's the lowest vitality number? That's the number of spaces you move. And then everybody's testing, and maybe it should just be vitality for chasing. Maybe it's just literally vitality. You've got this, you test something like stability at the start to see if you keep your wits about you to get a good head start. Ooh, yeah, that's kind of a cool idea, actually, I think. And I could tie acrobatics to that as well. So you roll your stability to start, and the number of spaces you can move at the start is equal to your acrobatics. The lowest acrobatics, which might be 1 in some groups, which isn't very much. But every success you get adds a 1 to it as well. So if we look at this... Not that one. We look at this one. So if you were able to get a 5, you jump straight up to 15. That is possible if people are rolling well enough with their stability to hit 5. They get an instant boost to jump up. Yeah, standard movement rate. I was thinking that as well, but I kind of, again, I like having the amount you can move. Really like the amount that you can move being tied to your vitality. And I guess I just say for the first round and every round after, it doesn't matter. You're always, the number of spaces you can move is the lowest vitality. I'm just going to type that in. Like that's just a nice little simple rule. The base number of squares you can move. Chasing uses the same initiative as combat. If starting a chase during combat, do not start rolling again from round 1. Continue directly from the current combat round. Chase scenes use the fork and torch. The fork and torch board below. Insert image. Let's get a fork and torch in there. Boom! Beautiful. So, the base number of squares you can move is is determined by